Schmitt Olabisi. I am a new joint hire with ESPP and CARS, which I think all of you know what that stands for, but just in case, Community, Agriculture, Recreation, and Resource Studies. He was rolling his eyes. Thanks to Louis Arca, you guys, that was great, and I actually learned a lot more about what you do, and I have some ideas now, but now I'm going to present a little bit of what I do, kind of structured along the lines of the journey I took to get here. So the physical journey here, I was born in Madison, Wisconsin, moved to Charlottesville, Virginia for a few years, but spent most of my growing up years in the other university town to the south of here. I went to Brown in Providence, Rhode Island for my undergrad. Then I lived in the Philippines for a year doing some community development work. I then did my graduate degree at SUNY ESF, Environmental Science and Forestry in Syracuse, New York. Spent 2 years at the University of Minnesota, and now I'm here. So I thought I would talk about kind of what I do in terms of some revelations I had along the way in my academic journey. The first one occurred when I was a very little girl, that I wanted to be a scientist, and I owe a lot of that to this gentleman in the center here, who was my grandfather. He was a physicist who worked for General Electric for many, many years before he retired. And he always encouraged me to ask questions, to satisfy my curiosity, to experiment, to find out things. And that, I think, combined with the fact that I grew up on the outskirts of town, surrounded by woods and fields and streams, and combined with the fact that my parents did not allow us to watch TV when I was young, so I had to go out and play. And spent a lot of time observing the natural world. So all those things together made me want to be an environmental scientist. And I'm the third generation of PhDs in my family. So my grandfather got his PhD in physics in the 1950s. My father got his PhD in computer science in the 1980s. And I got my PhD in ecology in the 2000s. And I think that says a lot about where we moved as a society over the years. It's an interesting thing. So when I started my undergraduate degree, it was in the mid to late 90s. It was kind of the transition to the new set of problems that we're currently worried about. I feel like the worry that spawned the environmental movement, the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act started with Silent Spring. That the river in my backyard is catching fire. I can't breathe the air. Those problems had kind of ebbed, and we were kind of moving into being worried about climate change, about the depletion of non-renewable resources that run our entire economy and society. And these things are much more global in scope. And I started to understand that I think the problems that we're going to have to face in the 21st century are primarily environmental. So that's, I wanted to be a part of the solution. And so I moved to the Philippines for a year with the hope of working with a community environmental organization that addressed environmental issues in the rural uplands. I wasn't so aware of the kind of human side of all this. But when I moved there, I became very aware that people in the Philippines, they don't separate in their minds environmental problems from social problems like poverty, like disenfranchisement, et cetera, because they are so interlinked, and they're very tied to the Philippines' colonial history, which is this sign over there. I found in a park in Manila, but it's kind of a commentary for Americans who are one of the colonial powers in the Philippines, of course. So I lived there for a year. I worked on environmental issues, and I came back really wanting to integrate social and ecological frameworks to look at the problem of soil erosion, which is a major threat to sustainability of upland systems there. And I was surprised to find some resistance to that. I was surprised that, trying to get a degree in ecology, a lot of the ecologists were saying, well, why do you want to go talk to people and find out how they make decisions? I mean, that's social science. That's not, you're an ecologist. You should be measuring soil and measuring water and that kind of thing. And then the social scientists were a little bit confused because they didn't see many ecologists kind of come strolling into their departments. And they're, well, why are you here? Why are you applying for grant money? You're not a sociologist. You're not an economist. So I struggled a little bit to get a team together that would kind of support what I was trying to do. And eventually I put it together, and I came up with modeling as a framework to integrate different forms of knowledge about the system, ecological knowledge and social knowledge. And another thing I want to say about interdisciplinarity, which is relevant also to the way I work today. I think there's many different ways to be interdisciplinary. And the dominant model that I found in grad school that was kind of advanced was you get really, really good at your disciplinary field, and then you go talk to other people who are good at their fields, and you kind of collaborate with them. And that's a very valid model. I mean, that's great to do, and I'm not saying that that's not. But for me, that was unsatisfactory. And for me, I wanted to be not just the person who was good in her discipline, but the person who could, when the ecologist and the economist and, they sit down together, who's a person who can bridge those? Who's the person who can use the tool to integrate the knowledge that those two people have? And that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I tried to do with my modeling of the soil erosion problem there, which incorporated the way that farmers make decisions about what they do on their fields, with some basic knowledge of how soils function on the island and the erosivity of different soils. And then I tried to validate that with some measurements from rivers on the island that measuring sedimentation levels.